Howdy, folks. Spencer here, and today I'll be going over an interview and economic discussion that I recently had with a Star Trek Online gold seller. Before I get too far into things, I do have a couple of quick notes. First, I want it to be very clear that I am not promoting or condoning gold selling activities, and I'm going to warn you, as you can see up on the screen now, that participating in gold selling activities as a buyer or seller is against the terms of service of the game and can result in punishment to your account. Now, regardless of that, the reality is that gold selling, just like botting, is a major issue in the game and does have an impact on the market. And I think it's important to try and get some other viewpoints on some of the economic issues, and who better than a gold seller to to give us their point of view on what they think of the economy and the issues it faces. They're going to have a different viewpoint than us normal players would have, and they are going to have a bit of information and knowledge on some topics that the average player may not be considering from their viewpoint. The second note here is that this interview did occur via text, so I am going to be reading out my questions to them and their answers back to me verbatim. And there will be some commentary following each question, but for the most part, what you're going to see is that this is a PowerPoint video, and I'd highly recommend just having out and listening to it, unless you like looking at PowerPoint slides for a couple minutes at a time. The last note here is that, as always, chapters are listed down below. The first part of this video will be the interview, and then the second part is going to be the economic issues that they wanted to talk about and their thoughts on how to resolve them. And some of you are probably wondering, how did this interview even happen? Well, in this specific case, this gold seller is an actual player of the game, and they also happen to be a viewer of my channel and several other STO YouTube channels. After I did the other economic videos back in December and January, going over the botting issues, they reached out and asked if I wanted to have a chat about any economic issues and if I wanted to ask them any questions about botting or gold selling. I was able to verify that they are actually a gold seller and not someone just making up a story. They sent me pictures of their seller dashboard, and I was able to match that up with one of the gold sellers on one of the gold selling sites just by looking at the reviews and the items that were the reviews were for. The value of those matched up to the sales figures that I saw. And they did ask that I leave any identifiable information out of the video, so I am going to refrain from putting that proof in the video to respect their privacy. And up on the screen now is the list of questions that I had sent to them. And for questions 1 and 2, those were basically answered by the prior slide. Question 1 was asking about whether or not I can share their answers publicly, and again, they said yes, so long as I kept out any identifiable information. Question 2 was asking for proof, which they covered, but I am not going to show publicly because that would be identifiable information. The rest of the questions I'll be going over now on the next couple of slides, and again, there will be chapters listed down below if you want to skip ahead to specific questions. And the first set of questions here are going to be a bit of background. So the first one here is, outside of gold selling, how much have you engaged with STO as a player in the past? Have you done all of the content or chased the EPS, or has your focus mostly been on the markets? And their response was, quote, I've been engaged since 2012 and am constantly in touch with STO news, builds, and Reddit. I've followed some of your guides and augmented before, end quote. So, like I was saying before, they are someone that actually plays the game, which may surprise some of you, because typically when you think of gold sellers, I think the standard stigma for them is it's like a Chinese gold seller, right? But the reality is quite a few gold sellers are just normal folks that happen to have some extra assets in the game, and they decide to sell them externally rather than flip them for more in-game assets. And the second question here is STO the only game you are a gold seller for which they responded with no. And the next two questions are going to lean into their history with gold selling. So the first question on this slide is, how long have you been involved with gold selling activities? They responded with, quote, since Diablo 2, but it has never been a full-time job for me, end quote. So they have been involved in a variety of games, like they said. And the important thing is that this isn't their primary source of income. This is more of a hobby for them and like a side job, but they're not reliant on this to to live. So this does not get their full focus. And the next question here is, what made you decide to become a gold seller? They responded with, quote, I know the market intimately and had a lot of items. I started off giving things to friends, but still had a lot left over. I initially sold to EGPal, but I was getting ripped off, so I decided to start my own store. Once I started getting established, I made a lot of good friends and built a trustworthy and honest store. 99% of my STO customers have been some of the kindest people I've met from all walks of life, end quote. And there's a few different takeaways from their response here. The first one is that they are intimately familiar with the market. So I think that's going to hint towards what their approach is for acquiring resources. Second is that they started off selling to EGPal. EGPal is a very large gold selling organization or business, and I believe they're involved with many, many different games. And alongside botting and doing the normal stuff you see from lots of gold sellers, what they'll do is they'll spam out mails in the game advertising their stuff, but they'll also advertise that they're buying items if you have any extras to sell. So EGPal will buy excess items off of players, but they'll of course offer a substantially lower amount than the value of that item is that they're going to sell it for. So this individual realized that EGPal was ripping them off and that they could get a lot more by selling it themselves. So they started selling the excess items they had themselves. And once they did that, they started to build relationships with their customers, and they've just had a really successful time since. Now, every interaction I had with this person seemed, very positive. So they just seem like a kind individual, and that is definitely one of the keys to having a very successful business, which I would say they're fairly successful in what they're doing. And next up is going to be some questions regarding the scale of their operation. So the first question here is, can you provide any information regarding the scale of your specific operation, like how many ships, keys, or EC you move each month? They responded with, quote, my operation is small and I do not use bots or any software manipulation. I'd rather not share the exact amount of items I sell each month, end quote. So the reasoning for this type of answer is because revealing that type of information could be identifiable. So it's understandable that they don't want to reveal those figures, because if someone, especially at Cryptic, really wanted to hunt them down, those types of figures, looking for accounts that have traded this amount of ships each month or this much EC, that could be a giveaway that would lead to this to punishment being taken on this individual. So I understand their reluctance there. Next question is, has Cryptic ever taken action on your operation? They responded with, quote, nope. If they did, hundreds of items on the exchange would disappear and hurt the in-game economy for a while, end quote. So again, leaning in towards that idea that their approach to getting stuff is through playing the market. They're saying that if Cryptic ever did punish their account, it would cause the in-game economy to suffer a little bit, because they are supplying several categories on the in-game player exchange. And the next two questions are going to be about how they acquire the resources and have any of the methods they've used ever been patched out. So the first one here is, can you go over your methods for acquiring resources? They responded with, quote, not really. I don't mess with the Dil market, and I supply a substantial number of items on the exchange with no software needed, end quote. So again, this is a bit redundant at this point. I've already talked about this, but they play the market quite a bit, and they're not using any botting methods or any software to play the market. They're just playing it like a normal player would. Next question is, are there any methods that you used in the past that Cryptic patched out? And they responded with one word, nope. So everything they are doing right now to acquire the resources is sounding like it's legitimate. And the next question is, how many other gold sellers do you believe exist for Star Trek Online? And how small or large do you think your operation is compared to what those other sellers are doing? They responded with, quote, there are at least over a dozen, if not more, and I know a couple personally. Their methods are not limited to farming Starbase 1, and some have very large operations for farming Dil to convert to Zen. My method is completely within the game's terms of service, but also by selling those items, I break the terms of service. I can churn out profit as much as them if I actually wanted to, bot and hire people, end quote. And some big takeaways from this one are, again, that what they are doing to acquire their resources and ships and all that they're selling is perfectly within the game's terms of service, which, again, is most likely they're just playing the in-game exchange. And they're breaking the TOS when they go and sell the items externally. For the other gold sellers, they think that there's at least a dozen other out there, which honestly, there's probably even more than that if you go and look at all the different gold selling pages that exist. And they straight up say, not all of them are doing Starbase 1, which isn't surprising. I talked about Admiralty botting in the economy video that I did, and I also talked about regional price abusing, and I fully expect that that is the route that some of these gold sellers are going. Moving on, our next question is, do you think Cryptic's actions and monetization approaches have helped your business? They responded with, quote, yes, they have tremendously helped. A lot of my buyers are casual players following expensive builds that do not have time to farm for their items, end quote. And you look at the costs of like a min-max ship build, and it's very easy to understand why, this individual is saying this, because, the cost to go out and fully build out like a really high-end DPS platform, like that can be hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Some of the like record-setting builds can easily run over $1,000. So it's very understandable that people looking to get into the game a bit more would want to go and look at alternative ways to acquire ships, given how expensive some of these ships are to obtain legitimately through the game. Next question is, do you think the bot farms and or gold selling operations have helped the STO economy? They responded with yes and no. And for that, we'll have some more commentary on that in the economic discussion later on in the video. And the next question is, have you noticed any impact on sales from the introduction of MUDs bundles? They responded with, quote, not really. The MUDs pack is extremely expensive for folks who want to change up their builds. The pack is convenient for a few people, but not the majority, end quote. And like I have noted on the slide, this is not the first gold seller that I've heard this from. And I think the reason for it, a lot of people, when they look at a MUDs bundle, there's just usually one specific ship that they want from it. And MUDs bundles are expensive. They're $300 for the choice pack outside of a sale, $150 during a sale. And for a lot of people, they just want one ship and they don't want to have to spend that much money to go and get that one ship and then be forced to, also pick up a couple other ships. So people have specific things that they want, and these MUDs bundles are just too expensive to be a route for a lot of people to go. A lot of people would rather spend that $50-$60 through a gold seller to get the specific lockbox ship they want rather than waiting for it to be added to a MUDs bundle or a sale to happen for the MUDs bundles. So it's understandable to me that there really isn't that much impact from the MUDs market on the gold selling economy. And next question, from your point of view, do you think Cryptic will act on bot farms and or gold selling operations with the recent pressure applied from myself and others in the community? They responded with, quote, I highly doubt it. Like you said in one of your videos, the metrics benefit Cryptic. They still get a lot of money from regular players and also the region abusers. Cryptic can put any price on a pixel and people will still buy it. If they don't have the money to gamble $200, that's where the gold sellers come in. Gold sellers are a necessary evil for Cryptic to have more engagement. I would say bots make up 30% of the total player base at the moment. There have been bots in the game ever since launch, end quote. So there's a few different takeaways here. The first one, they highly doubt Cryptic will actually go in and take much action, and I agree. Cryptic has, however, shown that they have actually taken some action on the Starbase 1 bot farms. However, I don't think they have thus far went through and changed defensive Starbase 1 to make it so you can't just AFK it. But I know that a lot of the bot farms that were running Starbase 1 have seemingly been taken out, but there's still a few that are definitely operating. The second takeaway is, Cryptic will put really high prices on the pixels and people will be willing to pay for it. That's definitely true, and those prices again are why gold sellers are so prevalent in this game. Now, they also feel that bots make up as much as 30% of the player base, and honestly, that seems like a really high number, but you think about like that bot farm I talked about in the initial economy video, like there were hundreds of Starbase 1 instances running for years, and Cryptic never took action. So I think Cryptic's like failure to detect and stop those bot farms early on has definitely led to there being massive amounts of bots in the game. So I don't know if 30%, of the player base is actually bots, but I would say there is a fairly substantial portion of the active player base that is just running on a script. And the last question for the interview portion here is, in the lead up to this interview, the gold seller mentioned that they plan to quit in the future. And I asked them if they could give any information as to what is pushing them away from the game and the gold selling scene. They responded with, quote, "There are many factors in the plans to quit. They refuse to innovate and improve the game as a whole. It's really hard who to place the blame on specifically. The developer team is small and maybe they don't have the resources to expand. The episodic expansions do absolutely nothing to keep players engaged long enough to pump more money. They constantly patch out builds that are OP, but since the PvP scene is dead, why rob the basic mechanic PvE system a chance to thrive? ISC has been the same DPS benchmark tool for years. There hasn't been an excitement level since the new Romulus or Delta Quadrant expansions. The only thing left for people to do is to try and grind for OP builds, do dailies, or just hang out with your buddies in the fleets. The only fun I have now is dealing with the market and having great relations with my customers. I've built a trustworthy and reliability factor that earned me a lot of friends that expand across the globe. The only reason why I keep selling is because of the relations I built with my customers so that they can get something at a good price without gambling their savings away. The extra income is nice, but I really enjoy the friendships I've made from selling my items." End quote. So, a few different things to take away from that there. And to be honest, when I initially read this, it sounded like most of this sounds like the same stuff you would hear from any other player. And this really emphasizes again that this individual, this gold seller, they're just a normal player, and they have decided to, go through and sell some of their extra items that they get externally outside of the game. And, they're running into the same issues that the majority of us have. And, I think most of the stuff that they said here, I don't even need to really elaborate on because, half of you probably feel the same way about most of what they said. You know, the development team is small and doesn't have enough resources given to it to expand the game. The the episodic expansions are not enough to keep us engaged long term. Like then there really hasn't been a really high level of excitement in the game since the new Romulus or Delta Quadrant expansions. That's absolutely true. So I don't. really disagree with anything they said here. And I imagine, most of you can pretty much feel the same way about many of the things that they just described. And just a quick recap then of the interview, some of the big takeaways that I got from this. Number one, some gold sellers are simply normal players that flip some of their in game assets for real money. Next takeaway was that there are at least a dozen other gold sellers out there for STO, and you can go look on eBay, player auctions, the other sites out there, and you'll see that that's a very reasonable number. There's definitely at least a dozen other gold sellers out there. And the last one that I have here is that Cryptic's monetization approaches to the game have enabled these gold sellers to flourish due to the insanely high costs or limited opportunities to obtain many ships in the game. Like I said before, is some of the ships that Cryptic puts into the game are absurdly expensive. And if you're someone going in and trying to do a specific build, the cost if you go directly through the game can be nuts. Like I was saying before, the price of a min max like torp DPS record run build that can easily be upwards of $1,000. And if someone new is coming into the game and trying to get into that type of stuff, trying to obtain it legitimately is quite rough. And that is really where these gold sellers go in and fill the gap that Cryptic has created. Okay, so for this part of the video, we are going to be discussing a couple of the economic issues that the gold seller wanted to talk about. And I'm going to start off with the description of the problem for that topic. Then we'll go over the gold seller's response and my thoughts if I have any thoughts on that topic. And for the first economic topic, we are going to be taking a look at bots. So the issue here is that botting is, a really huge issue in a lot of games. And in the first economic video I did back in December, I showed that there was a massive bot farm running in Starbase 1. However, there's also bots out there for duty officer missions and Admiralty. So Starbase 1 is for sure not the only botting method out there. And the issue that bots cause is they are generating a lot of resources and they are potentially degrading server performance for other players, as all of those accounts running and doing specific queues or whatever content they're doing could potentially be utilizing server resources that could be allocated to real players. And a recap on that Starbase 1 bot farm video. There was one bot farm that was generating 350 million dilithium per month. And since I reported that bot farm back in December, we have seen the Dil'X continue to go down quite drastically in the 2 months now since then. We're at about 5.5 million in the backlog now, whereas back at the middle of December, right before I sent that report in, it was around 11 million. So quite a bit of improvement since that bot farm was taken out. So let's go over the gold seller's opinion now. And I'm going to read off their thoughts here. Quote, bots are currently serving a huge population in STO right now and have been for a very long time. Over the years, they have refined their methods and are now a primary source for keys on the exchange. If you nuked all of the bots, key prices would skyrocket and the Zen store could take years to stabilize. Throughout the years, every single sale, ship release, key sale have impacted the Zen store, which drove it higher. Both Cryptic and the bots have a major blame into this. So how do you combat dill farmers? It's very hard, especially if you have a small development team and do not have the vigilance to hire multiple GMs to moderate. However, there are some solutions Cryptic could put a dent in the botting realm. The first would be to implementing a two-factor authentication system. The one they currently have can be easily bypassed by bots. To improve security and halt the bots, a 2FA system could be implemented when you log onto your account via something like the Google Authenticator. Every time you log on, it would require a random sequence to enter into the account, and each account would have a unique 2FA ID. This would be a minor nuisance for random users, but a stopgap measure to temporarily halt all of the major botting operations. They could do their own app like Blizzard Battle.net does, but I doubt they could do it. They could even require a 2FA from a text message and block VoIP numbers. Shoot, they could even do a CAPTCHA for every login attempt. So, end quote there. The big takeaway from their opinion on bots was the idea to implement a two-factor authentication or CAPTCHA approach. And when we go over to my opinion, I very much like that. Two-factor authentication is a good idea. However, I wouldn't require it to play the game in general, but I do think that they could lock access to the Dilithium exchange to accounts to only accounts that have two-factor authentication enabled. I think something like that would work. However, there is one potential issue with that, and that is that there are desktop two-factor authentication methods out there nowadays. So it is possible that there could end up being bots sophisticated enough to go through and also have a 2FA running right on the desktop that they can pull from. So that would probably stop most of the bots, but there'd probably still be some advanced enough to counter that. And, maybe what would be really good in my opinion is every time you go to do a Dilx transaction, it makes you go in and enter the 2FA code again. So I think that could work really well. It would also be a nice little safety net to make sure someone doesn't put in an order that they didn't mean to put in. I think that would work really well. The CAPTCHA approach could work too, but I foresee that would really just irritate people. And the thing is, I've got noted here, bots are going to exist no matter what. But Cryptic just needs to be more vigilant with them. Like, it's ridiculous that Starbase 1 was allowed to have so many instances running without being detected, or even worse is they knew that they were there and just let them run. We don't really know there, but it just is crazy to me that they didn't notice Starbase 1 being played so much, and that they like their metrics. How did they not see that Starbase 1 was being played so much more than any other queue? So I think just being more vigilant and being more aggressive against any bots or methods that are clearly visible on their metrics would be really good. But the 2FA idea I think is really good and something that they could probably look into. And next up, expanding on the bot issue, is that bots control the key market and just large chunks of the economy in general. The purpose of bots is to generate resources like Dil and EC, as we've discussed earlier in this video. Once they acquire the Dil, they then convert it to Zen via the Dilithium exchange and use the Zen to acquire keys or promo packs. Again, that is why the bots doing Starbase 1 was so bad for the Dilithium economy and the Dilex, because all of that Dilithium they were getting, that 350 million a month, they were dumping that right into the Dilex, and that was taken away a lot from the average player. So getting those bots taken care of was really huge for the Dilex, as we have seen. Given the scale of the operations out there, they are clearly a significant source of both keys and promo packs that are put on the market. And they either sell the keys or promo packs directly to players for money, or they will sell them in game to get EC, or other items like ships to then sell to players. So here are the opinions for bots controlling the key market. We'll start off with the gold sellers. Quote, "It is undeniable that bots control the key market. The botter's sole function is to turn lithium to Zen and grab keys. If you nuke the bots, prices will skyrocket with the current Dilex," end quote. So the gold seller believes that if all of the bots were taken out that currently exist in the game, it would cause the prices of many lockbox related items to skyrocket, and especially keys, as the botters and the bots out there are supplying a massive amount of keys to the market. And my opinion on this is, I'm agreeing with that, but also just I go over some of my past experiences running into bots on the exchange. Back when the Infinity Lockbox first came out, um, that there were lots of very expensive lockbox items that were still selling very well for the first day or so. And as soon as you would post some of the items, like a chemosite manual, too cheap, a bot would immediately go and pick it up. Same for things like the Plasmonic Leech console and any of the other lockbox items that used to be really expensive. So as soon as you would post something too cheap, the bot would pick it up. And that still happens to this day on the market. But there's also bots that are going to flood the market with some items. And I think you see that with all those single key listings because I don't. I have to imagine those are bots doing the single key listings because if it's a real player, then they're insane. Like, I couldn't imagine a real player going through and listing like 100 keys one by one. You'd think that most people would just go through and post a full stack, but I think the bots, they don't care. They'll post them one by one. And for the next topic, it is Dil'Hadars. So, Jem'Hadar faction characters start at level 60, which provides an extremely easy route for botters to establish characters for farming or bot operations. If you recall that Starbase 1 video I did, when we looked at the instances of all of the people in the Starbase 1 maps, it was almost always just Jem'Hadar science, and it'd be like 90 of the 100 instances were just Jem'Hadar science. So Jem'Hadars are extremely popular, and the it's a widespread enough that the player base just generally calls them Dil'Hadars. Cryptic has introduced some restrictions on them over the years, such as a 20-hour playtime requirement to unlock certain systems, but that's just playtime, and all a botter has to do is stand AFK near the exchange for 20 hours. So here are the opinions on Dil'Hadars. Let's start off with the gold sellers. Quote, there are numerous restrictions that they can put on these characters. This fix would probably annoy human Dil'Hadar farmers, but if you want to help kill some of the bots, this is one way you could, again, put a stopgap for these bot accounts. Simply deny Admiralty until the character has completed X amount of endeavors or episode missions. This would apply to each Jem'Hadar character who wants access to Admiralty. These characters have event counters already built in, so it wouldn't be difficult to do it again. Again, this is a stopgap measure. End quote. So they are saying, just add in more restrictions, make a requirement where you can't access things like Admiralty on a Dil'Hadar until you've earned endeavor points on that character or done more episode missions. And I think things like that are perfectly fair. And again, going back to the two-factor authentication or CAPTCHA idea from before, add in that requirement for any Dilex transactions, and I think that would really help quite a bit. And I think that pretty much covers my thoughts there. Like just adding in some extra filters, some extra requirements for Dil'Hadars before they can access systems would be quite beneficial. So for the next issue, we have the Omega Trace event, and the Omega stuff you guys are probably familiar with if you've ever done the daily during the anniversary event to get the party popper. It's that little mini game where you have to try and capture as many of the Omega molecules as possible, and you get Omega materials out of it like traces, slivers, fragments, things like that. Well, back in the day, all of that stuff used to be unbound and you could trade it or sell it. However, it was being heavily botted to the point where you could go on eBay or player auctions and there was software people were selling specifically to automate the Omega stuff. Like botting it had become extremely common to the point where you could go spend $30 to get software to automate it. And Cryptic couldn't figure out how to stop that. So their reaction was to make it so all of the Omega stuff would bind on pickup. And that basically killed the entire market that had developed around those Omega pieces. And people were used to grind them as a really nice free to play option. And that change completely killed that. And time for the opinions. So I don't have much of an opinion myself on this specific issue, so we'll just stick to what the gold seller has to say. Quote, so this one will be another issue they could correct. The market was somewhat stable when you could actually sell these. This allowed human players to sell their items once a year to make extra EC and provide other players to upgrade for a lower fee. These unbound items helped prices drop for numerous items on the exchange. People could sell, buy keys, open boxes, and provide ships on the exchange. Of course, botters would take advantage of this, but it actually made the exchange economy healthy. This is once a year event, so why make it bound? This is honestly the only way bots have helped the game. End quote. So the point that they're trying to make here is that even though bots, were very common with this event, it was a very good route to provide a cheaper upgrade route for a lot of players. It got, it increased player engagement in the game is another thing too, because you're sitting there doing that little mini game to grind these things out. And even though there are bots there, like the supply into the market was healthy, and the overall boost to the economy from more free to play players and budget oriented players having access to something where they could get EC ended up being extremely beneficial. So they think even though that botters, were very common in this, it's worth the trade off because it was a really healthy boost to the economy. And I would agree with that. Like, I didn't really engage much with the Omega stuff, but I know a lot of people that would go through and grind the Omega event, the entire anniversary event, and that's how they would pick up some of the lockbox ships and some of the gear that they were waiting for. So it was something that did really boost player engagement, and I think for Cryptic, that might be one case where it'd be worth just unbinding that stuff again, especially given it's a limited once a year event just during the anniversary events. And the next topic is raising the EC cap. So the issue here is that the player exchange is capped at 1.5 billion EC, and there are items that are worth more than that, which means that there are some items that you just do not see on the player exchange because the cap isn't high enough. So let's go over the opinions. The gold seller will be the first opinion here. Quote, a lot of ships and one-time lobby promotions are nowhere to be found on the market because they go over 1.5 billion EC. More promo ships would be on the exchange, and end quote. I went back and checked and I didn't get the rest of that message, but I think what they were going to say is the prices would probably, you might see some of the prices drop, because the issue with the current approach where you have to go through a trade channel to get a promo ship means that they're not all that common and there's not much competition on the prices. If the promo ships were being put right on the exchange, then that's going to drive prices down potentially, because people that have the same ship are going to have to be lowering their prices to undercut the other people posting that same ship. So that, raising the EC cap, as weird as it sounds, could cause the prices of some of those promo ships to potentially drop. My opinion on this is the cap has been raised before, and I think that promo ships selling above the exchange cap heavily diminishes availability for most of the player base, which is one of the key things that is pushing a lot of people to go to and purchase from gold sellers. I mean, if you think about it, if you are trying to replicate a specific like DPS build and you see that you really want this one promo ship, your choices are wait for one to appear on the exchange, gamble for one, which is going to be, is going to be really costly, or you can just go to a gold seller and pick it up right now. Like, no wait time, you just pick it up right now. And that's one of Cryptic's biggest issues with their monetization approach is in order for Cryptic to be the one getting the money, there needs to be a route for someone to go in and pick up a ship that they want when they want it. And with how they monetize some of these ships, it just doesn't work like that. So The EC cap being where it is for the exchange is one reason that promo ships are really expensive and hard to obtain. And this is the other reason. And this is our next topic, increasing the frequency of Infinity Pack sales. The issue here is that promotional ships are only available via gamble boxes that are only run for brief durations throughout the year. So even if you want to gamble for a promo ship, you can't always gamble for it because the promo packs are only available for a couple weeks at a time, a couple times throughout the year. So the supply of the promo packs is really limited, and that is one of the reasons the prices on those ships is so absurdly high. So the gold seller's opinion on this is, quote, since the Zen market is pretty much dead, allow the average user to obtain promotion ships on the exchange. There are several builds that people go after and can't get the ship they want because it's not on there. Why? It costs more than 1.5 bill, and Cryptic does this event once every 3 to 4 months. Key sales happen all the time, but there are so many ships in those block box packs. It is near impossible to get every ship they need for builds, end quote. So, that's basically what I just said in the last slide is just things aren't available. And if things aren't available directly in the game, then like I said, people are going to look outside the game. And you can go look on eBay and you can see, how many of each listing for a promo ship is sold. And you look at some of them, and some of these promo ships from each of these sellers, they've got like 20, 30 sales. It's just, it's crazy. And that's so much money that Cryptic is leaving on the table because they're not even giving you the chance to gamble for these ships year round. And my thoughts on this is basically just recapping what I said on the EC topic. So let's move on to the next topic here. And that next topic is regional price abuse. So this is something that I discussed quite a bit in the first economic video I did. So I'm not going to have an opinion in this video because I feel like I already covered it pretty well over there. But to recap, other regions have Zen at a cheaper price to adjust to the incomes in those regions. And what will happen is some people will use like a VPN and fake accounts to go over there and abuse that to get Zen at a cheaper price so that they can get things like keys and promo packs at a cheaper cost to them to then go and sell. The gold seller's opinion on this is, quote, this is currently an issue, but Cryptic is still making money. This is something that will most likely be kept because as a consumer, who are we to decide how much Star Trek Online pixels cost? That is up to Cryptic. Region abuse is being done across multiple MMOs and is very hard to stop. If you try to mess with it, you end up hurting players from that region, end quote. So yeah, that's basically what I said in the first video is you just have to like find the people abusing it and deal with them. You can't actually stop, the regional price adjustments that the company is making because doing that only hurts legitimate players. Our next topic is innovation for new dilithium sinks. So the issue here is Cryptic is not always being the most creative when it comes to developing Dil sinks. And my note here is to look no further than the fall 2022 fleet update, in which they tried to sell us new duty officers which were copy paste of very rare DOFs, but at 20 times the price. So yeah, some of the Dil sinks Cryptic has tried to do over the years, like they've had some good ones, but they've also had some where it was truly a facepalm moment. The gold seller's opinion on this is, quote, Cryptic should introduce a character hub that is similar to how fleet projects work. Finishing projects with dilithium could unlock certain perks for the character or account. That's where the debate comes in for whether it should be per character or the entire account. Doing certain TFOs could help progress the projects, like dumping in the elite and advanced rewards for that specific TFO. This would help boost metrics for multiple TFOs, and the gold seller says that they could write up an entire idea for the hub Dil Sink, but for all they know, their opinion wouldn't matter, end quote. So their idea is to basically just have like a player individual fleet, which isn't the worst idea, but I just don't see Cryptic doing it, to be perfectly honest with you. At this point, they don't even want to do more fleet updates. like fleet holdings. So I really don't think they would go and do a character specific hub like this nowadays. I mean, we can't even get new ship bridges now. And my note here, my thought, I'm going to be doing my own economic video here soon where it's just my thoughts on how to fix things like the Dil'X. So I'll probably be talking about this stuff a bit more when that video drops. And the last economic topic we have here is innovations for TFOs, so task force operations. And the issue here is that there's not much long-term incentive to play TFOs outside of Marks or Lithium. So the Gold Seller's opinion is, quote, like most MMO games, PvE content can reward special items to unlock a set piece. Why this hasn't been implemented long ago has me confused. The only set items you can get currently are through reputation marks or lobby. Why not make TFOs worth the grind for a chance at a unique set piece? You could have more TFO engagement. Whether the set items can be bound is up to them, but we do have a need greed system already, and all we get is crappy gear to salvage. Shoot, the opportunity to get a Vandy shield would get engagement. We all want Space Barbie status, end quote. So that part of what they said has actually been in the game before. And for many of you, you may not remember this, but way back in the first couple years of the game, before the reputation system was introduced, if you wanted specific like parts of like some of the Borg sets that we now use, like you had to go through and play the various queues for the Borg stuff, and there was specific set items that had a chance to drop from the specific queues. So that type of stuff used to exist in this game, but because of how Cryptic has developed the game with their extreme like casual type focus, they've removed systems like that to instead have everything easily available via the reputation system. But I do think something like that needs to return to the game. People need to have a reason of some sort to go through and grind out some content. And that's, it's a boost for metrics, and it gives people something to do. Playing XQ to get X set piece or Vandy shield, that would be a really good way to boost engagement, but to also give us something to do. And especially if they were unbound, like that could also be a new way for people to grind, to grind EC and stuff like that legitimate players could do. So I very much like this, this idea, and it's something they have done before, so it's something they can do. It's just that they need to be willing to do it. And lastly, I just want to say thank you again to this anonymous individual for taking the time to chat and answer the questions, and also to provide some more input on the economy and their thoughts on how to resolve the issues. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. So the interview and all that took place in the middle of January, and I had stuff happen at the late January that just kept pushing things back, and then the anniversary event dropped, and things just have been really busy for me. So I do apologize to this individual for this taking so long to get out, but I appreciate their patience, and I'm glad that we were able to get this all sorted out and arranged, because I think there's some interesting opinions in here, and hopefully, like I said at the beginning, hopefully this can add in some really nice input into the economic discussions moving forward. And, hopefully, it's been a little bit now since this interview was done, but hopefully we continue to see the Dil'X go on the trajectory it's currently going, where it is actually improving since the Starbase 1 bot farms got largely nuked. But that is going to be it for today. Thank you all for watching, and again, thank you to this individual for reaching out and doing the interview and discussion. But that is going to be it for today, so see you guys around.